What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, my bad luck has continued, of course. So when I got here to the garage this morning to do some work on this car, I noticed the front tire was actually low. I don't know if it was the bead didn't sit right or if it was the stem. I took it back to the Tire Point S, and of course they fixed it for me. It wasn't a big issue, but ever since I decided to get new rims, it's been one thing after another. So let me show you guys the other thing. I've mentioned this a few times before, I believe, but a lot of the wheel studs were cut for whatever reason. I don't know why anyone did that, especially because even when the wheel studs didn't have to be cut to fit the old spacers. So probably one of the previous owners before the shop that had this, that did the swap. That's my guess. Can't confirm that nor deny it. Just guessing. But point is, I was trying to change out wheel studs because a lot of them were cut. But before that, I had to deal with this. There was wheel lug nuts that were stripped, so that was a fight in itself. Once I removed the stripped off lug nuts, I was able to replace the wheel studs, as I'll show you guys right now. I went with just some like OE replacement wheel studs. They're from Dorman. I think it was, I actually don't remember the part number. When I looked online, Bill Strong actually had a big write-up of different wheel studs, their part numbers, and like their dimensions, which I found very, very, very useful. Anyways though, most of the wheel studs came out very, very easy, except two that were like the spawn of Satan. It was the two wheel studs on this wheel. And to be honest with you guys, I got very angry, and this is kind of the embarrassing part for me, but I kind of want to be honest about it because, I mean, when you work on cars, things happen. I will say I don't ever think I'll upload the footage because I don't think anyone's going to ever find it very fun to watch me just screaming and get mad. It's not a fun time. It's not what I want to watch. Anyways, so I tried everything from hammering, drilling. I got a drill bit stuck in, like it snapped off, which was annoying. I also tried cutting it out. I also took a torch to it, heating it up and expanding it and then getting it to cool off. Those two lug nuts were honestly just so rusted in, or not lug nuts, the wheel studs. What ended up happening was I lost my temper and I hammered the spindle and I kind of bent it. So I'm a little ashamed about that. So where that leaves me is I have to buy a new spindle. So that sucks. Now that you guys know all the bad decisions I've been making, let's get to the point of this video. We're going to do some maintenance on the race car today. A few things we have to do. First thing is we're going to change out the oil. The air filter has to be the air filter has to be cleaned. It's not super dirty, but I got a bunch of mud on it. So once we get to once we get to cleaning the air filter, I'll show you guys that. Also, we have to tighten up the supercharger belt. Also going to adjust the camber on the back end a little bit. So quite a few things to do, a bunch of small things, but they'll add up. While the oil drains, I figure I would talk about what oil I'm using, and then the other thing which people often overlook, and that is replacing the oil drain bolts. I'm not saying you have to do it every time, but these things kind of do tend to wear. I think this is a good example. You can see that it's kind of rounded on the head there, and then the washer is beat up on it. If not, at the very minimum, I always recommend replacing the oil drain plug washer gasket. This time though, because the bolt was so kind of like beat up, I just ended up getting a new one, but something to think about because it's common where like they leak there at the oil drain bolt. Seen it many of times. It's actually happened on Layla over here, which is right behind the camera. Now let's talk about the oil that I'm going to use in this car. First off though, I do want to say everyone does have different opinions, which is totally fine. Let's just kind of keep it civil, and I'd actually love to hear what you guys think down in the comment section. So first of all, this is actually my normal philosophy with oil, with just about any like regular car. And that is, I look at what the OE manufacturer recommendations are, and I literally buy the cheapest thing that meets that. I think the reason I've always been able to get away with it though is because I change my fluids very frequently, way more than's recommended, and the reason's pretty simple. All my cars, or at least the MR2s, all of them see track time. So because of that, I know that you know, the fluids are under higher stress, and they're going to need to be changed more frequently. But that's typically how I roll. With this car though, it's been a little bit different because it has that supercharger. Obviously, I want to be more mindful. All right, that was some guy blowing by in a Harley. I don't know if that camera picked it up. But anyways, I want to be more mindful. So I know it's under low boost, but it's still under more stress. Obviously, what I'm going to do with it is going to be more stressful. So my thought process is definitely need a synthetic. From there, I got to think about two things. First of all, the engine itself. It's actually completely stock, so that tells me it has tighter clearances. So based off of that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to want to be at a weight that's close to the OE specification. And then there's kind of like the third of how I'm driving it. So as of right now, and I hate to say it, this year this car's probably not going to get to see like actual track days or anything like that. So realistically, autocross, it might see a couple time attack events, but that's probably 2 to 3 minutes at the most, and then they'll see drag racing. So based off of that, it's not going to see prolonged like high RPMs and stress like you would from like open lapping at a track day. So what I ended up going with, taking all those things into account, was actually a 530 weight in engine oil that was fully synthetic. And the brand, some people may be curious, is Mobil 1. How I came to that was pretty simple. I went to the Acura/Honda forums and I just looked, what's the general consensus? Most people said Mobil 1. So that's what I went with. But there is the other thing I've been thinking about. What about when I start doing the open lapping? Because realistically, you know, a couple minutes, this engine's not going to start to thin out from that. But doing open lapping and, you know, running it pretty hard for 5, 10, 15 minutes, it can definitely start to thin out too much, which is a bit of an issue. I hit up the guys at AMSOIL, and they actually, or their customer service department that is, and they gave me a couple different recommendations. So anything from like a 1040 weight all the way to a 2050 weight. Obviously synthetic, they recommended specifically their Racing Dominator series. Probably the big thing about that is I'm definitely going to need to, or I would like to get a, or not like, I'm going to install down the road a oil pressure gauge and a oil temperature gauge. And that's going to give me a good idea of where I need to be. Because obviously with the tight clearances, if I run too thick of an oil, that can cause damage. If I run too thin of an oil, that can cause damage. If it thins out too much, of course. So as of right now, the 530s worked great and I have no caveats with it or issues with it. But I know with open tracking, it's going to need something else. So got to get that other stuff installed. All right. I don't know if the camera picked that up, but that was a 350Z, absolutely railing it. And forgive me if you own a 350Z, but they honestly sound like farts. They don't sound good in my opinion. Although most people would argue most V6s don't sound good. So some people would say this isn't the best sounding, which is fair. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But I absolutely hate it when the oil filters are upside down, because it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get drenched. I have thought about just piercing a hole in it to help drain the fluids, but I don't want to do that because I've actually, well, I don't want to do that again because I've done that once and it ended up in a fiasco for me because it was a pain to get the oil filter off then because I structurally damaged it. So I'm going to go clean myself up real quick. I'm reading the instructions real quick because I haven't cleaned one of these filters in ages. So let's see what she says. Let's see how big of a difference this makes. So the air filter is actually in not that bad of shape. Obviously right here there's a bunch of dirt, but overall it's in pretty clean shape. The story about this dirt is actually when I did that mountain drive a few weeks, actually it's like a couple months at this point now, because everything is like filmed typically like a month ahead of time at the minimum. There's always exceptions, but I was doing donuts in the dirt, and that's how all this got up here. But the reason I remember that so vividly is I was with my girlfriend, and she wasn't expecting it. So as soon as I started doing the donuts, she freaks out. She's like, "What are you doing?" She thought she was going to die, so that made my day. Now, one thing I am very glad about is that I do have this. So when I got the car, it had I think it's called a velocity stack. Because I'm a pack rat, I actually still have the attachment. But the point is, it was literally just a little bit of piping and an open, that was it. That was like it. There was no filter of any kind. While the cleaner is waiting to dry, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So first of all, I have a bunch of random stuff, as I've mentioned. I tend to be a pack rat. I mean, if I think I could use it in the future, I typically keep it. As you can see, I have shift cables. Actually over there, behind the rims, I have axles for the car, or for my white MR2. In these boxes, I have a bunch of random parts. I think these are, actually, what are these? I don't even know everything that I have. These are, oh, these are ball joints for a truck that I don't own anymore. Oh man, I should probably clean some of this out. But back to the main point. Oh, this is what was on the car. So it was a little bit of intake piping, and then this coupler, and then you have this. So it's a, I think velocity stack's the technical name. I actually see a lot of people running these, especially like if it's a race car only, like they go to the drag strip. But for me, who drives it on the street, like to and from events, that is a lot of potential contaminants that can get in the car, and I definitely don't want that. All right, guys, I got her all washed out, and wow, did I get everything? Absolutely not. There is a lot of that dirt and grime that just doesn't want to come out, but most of it did. And like when I was washing it out with the water right now, it was pure black, which is crazy to me because if I would have kept the velocity stack on, that all would have been in my engine, dude. That would have been very, very abrasive, especially at those high RPMs. So I'm going to let this dry overnight, which I guess doesn't matter because the car is not going anywhere. Tomorrow I'll just stack up that oil or spray it back with that oil, and she's good to go. Okay, guys, so I'm not going to be able to finish everything that I wanted to today. So far we obviously got the tire patched up in the front, or rebeaded or whatever. Got it refilled up with air. Oil change, cleaned the air filter. I was going to change the supercharger belt, but as you guys can see, it actually just needs to be full on replaced. I don't have time to take it off, run to a store to try to figure out a replacement, and then I didn't get to the camber bolts today. So I'm just going to finish that next time. Got quite a bit of work still left to do, as I mentioned. So those two things, I want to get the patch panel put on. Actually, let me show you guys that. I've had this probably for the better part of a couple months now. There's a guy named Nathan. He is in the process of building a J-swapped MR2, but he's going big power and turbo. So I'm very excited to see how that plays out. Anyways, he actually did a patch panel for his car. As you guys can see, I'll ignore that. Right here, I have the panel. What I'm going to have to do is get some sheet metal and then attach this to the sheet metal, and then from the sheet metal, I'll attach that to the car. I've just honestly been neglecting it. That's honestly the only reason I haven't gotten to it. Also, obviously, there is the spindle replacement. I'm getting the unit as a whole, so while it's out, I'm probably just going to go ahead and replace the wheel bearing just because I don't obviously know the previous life or if it's any good. That should be here next week, so there's quite a bit of work to be had, but I'm very optimistic and really want to push forward because, so that ORP, which is the time attack event that I mentioned in that previous video where I installed the rims, that one actually got pushed back to late June. I don't remember the exact date, which is really important because that means it is very likely to happen if things keep going where they're at. Because like for the first phase of Oregon's reopening, you're only allowed to have a max of 25 people. Which is really just not very feasible for that type of event because it's expensive to rent out a track. So in the second phase, they're going to allow larger gatherings. We don't know the exact number, but that should allow that event to happen, which I'm excited for. So I'm about 3 weeks out or 4 weeks out right now. So I got a lot of work to do to the car. Like I said, if I can get camber, supercharger belt, spindle, patch panel, obviously I'm going to get an alignment because I'm messing with the camber and everything, or I'll get the toe adjusted. That means the last thing I'll do is I want to actually put some flame retardant material under the carpet in the trunk. For you MR2 owners, you'll know how hot this gets even with the flame retardant material. So from the factory, there's some material there that, you know, obviously minimizes the heat and whatnot. I think it also helps with sound. My car doesn't have that, so it gets super, super hot. And one of my concerns is that this carpet in here will catch fire. I don't want that to happen for, well, obvious reasons. I definitely got a bunch of small things, and honestly in themselves are not hard, but you know, each individual thing takes up a lot of time, and it adds up. But I think it's completely manageable, and I'm really hoping to be ready for that event. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for next week. We're going to definitely replace the spindle on the front driver's side of the car, get the camber bolts, and whatever else we have time for. So thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next video.